Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be starting soon. So in the meantime, feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. While you do that, I wanted to go over a couple of housekeeping items that you see on the screen. A reminder that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website. There's closed captioning available, so you may access that in your settings. Please note that everyone's microphones and videos are off. And for the Q&A session, we'll be using the Q&A pane. So please submit your questions and comments there. And we will start in a few minutes. Okay, I think we can get started now. It is now 1:02. So go ahead, Darren, next slide. So hello, everyone. Welcome to the September SB 1383 Chat with CalRecycle. Today's topic, we will be focusing on non-local entities, specifically public universities and local education agencies. We have some great presenters lined up today who are excited to share their organic waste diversion and edible food recovery programs. My name is Arti Lal. I'm your facilitator. I'm a senior environmental scientist in the local assistance and market development branch of CalRecycle, and I assist non-local entities and local education agencies in implementing their SB 1383 programs. Joining me today are Laura Chain and Kathy Strictly, who assist with our schools programs. They'll be helping answer questions, and Laura will also help facilitate a little bit later on. In addition, we have Danielle Osborne and Alexis Arens, who will be assisting with edible food recovery questions, and of course, everyone else helping with today's chat. Diana Suarez Arguelles, who organized this chat, Morgan Steinke, Mallory Burton, Michelle Chavez Peralta, and Zach Smith will be introducing our wonderful presenters. Zach will also be leading the question and answer session later. Darren Sprecher and Chris Bria are providing technical support. And last but not least, our branch chief, Marshall Graham. We hope this webinar provides some helpful information on how public universities and local education agencies are implementing SB 1383 throughout California. Next slide. So before we get started with announcements, Marshall, I did want to go over the definitions for non-local entity and local education agency. So the definition for non-local entity is an entity that is an organic waste generator, but is not subject to the control of a jurisdiction's regulations related to solid waste. These entities may include, but are not limited to, special districts, federal facilities, prisons, facilities operated by state park system, public universities, including community colleges, county fairgrounds, and state agencies. A local education agency is a school district, charter school, or county office of education that is not subject to the control of the city or county regulations related to solid waste. And with that, I will now pass it over to our branch chief, Marshall Branch, for some announcements.
Fantastic, and thank you tremendously, RT. I do have one announcement today. And while CalRecycle is in the process of reviewing the state agency annual reports submitted in SARC, we are in SABRAC season, which is the state agency by recycle campaign. And the SABRAC reports are due on October 31st. Please reach out to your CalRecycle representative, or you can include any questions or requests for information in the SABRAC inbox, both of which I'll ask that we put the address into the chat so you have easy access. Otherwise, I just want to build on RT's gratitude for our presenters and the amazing CalRecycle chat team for creating this opportunity for us to engage and learn. We're incredibly fortunate for these experiences. And with that, I think I'll pass it back to you, RT.
Perfect. Thank you so much for those announcements, Marshall. Next slide, Darren. Okay, so before we get started, I wanted to go over a couple of logistical items related to our question and answer session. So for this webinar, we will be using the Q&A function. So please type a summary of your question into the Q&A pane. It's the Q&A bubble that you see on the screen here. You may use the chat pane to share information or resources with other participants, but please do not use the chat for your questions. We will not be monitoring that for questions. If you do not see the Q&A pane, please make sure you have the most updated version of Zoom. My colleagues and I will be filtering through your questions. Once called upon, please unmute yourself, state your name, affiliation, and restate your question. If your question is geared towards a specific panelist, please note that. We will be monitoring our SLCP inbox throughout the chat. You may send peer share requests, feedback, and panelist questions to our SLCP inbox to slcp.organics@calrecycle.ca.gov. Please use the subject line SB 1383 chat with CalRecycle. If you cannot unmute yourself and are unable to use the Q&A pane, please also submit those questions to the SLCP inbox. If we do not get to your questions today during the Q&A session, we will have your LAMD representative get back to you in a timely manner. Next slide. Okay, so here is the list of our presenters today. We have Santa Monica College, Cal Poly Humboldt, Sustainable Marin Schools, and Sacramento State University. After the presentations are complete, we will have time for Q&A. So now let's jump into our first presentation. So I will hand it over to Morgan.
Thank you, RT. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Morgan Steinke, and I am the local assistance representative in CalRecycle for the city of Santa Monica. And with that, I will be introducing our first presenter, who is Kenny Derrig. He is the recycling program specialist for Santa Monica College. Kenny has been involved in the world of sustainability for over 8 years, mostly focused on waste and more specifically food waste. He started his path as a waste warrior by interning with the city of Santa Monica to help them roll out their organic waste program back in 2016, when AB 1826 was starting to get implemented. He's worked part-time for 7 years at a local nonprofit organization called LA Compost, which establishes community compost hubs for folks to drop off their food scraps and get involved. His other waste roles have been focused on environmental education and most recently as the recycling program specialist for Santa Monica College, making sure that the school is in compliance with SB 1383 regulations. Kenny considers himself to be a worm nerd, but also enjoys spending his free time exploring the outdoors, learning how to play guitar, and playing sports of all kinds. And Kenny is excited to be here with us today. So with that, Kenny, you can go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Morgan, and good afternoon, y'all. Happy to be here. Once more, my name is Kenny Derrick, and I am the recycling program specialist for Santa Monica College. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right on in. So this opening slide is kind of a snapshot of food coming in, food about to be fed to the worms, and this is a group of students who are involved in that process, and we'll talk a little bit more about that now. So we'll jump on to the next slide if you could, please, Darren. Thank you so much. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge the flow of food waste that comes into our campus, because it's not simply just students bringing lunch to campus, eating and leaving. We are a commuter college, so we do not have dorms. We don't have any sort of student housing, so we don't have that side of the food ball game there. But we do have 3 cafes on campus. And beyond that cafe, we have something called the bodega. And the bodega is an awesome resource for students. So all students at SMC are able to come to the bodega. It's a little store on campus. They're able to bring a reusable bag and fill it up 5 days out of the week. Every day there's a little bit something different. So the bodega, we actually welcome food in from around LA County that has been rescued. And we have 2 main partners that are listed here on the slide. The first one being Food Cycle LA. So they recover edible food from all over LA County. They bring us about 5,000 pounds of groceries a week. This is fresh produce. This is canned goods. This is bagged, dried products, all sorts of different, fresh produce, as well as shelf-stable goods as well. And Trader Joe's and Whole Foods are actually some of the, the major contributors, the major donors towards the food that we see that comes through from Food Cycle. So these foods are good quality. They're high quality stuff. Oftentimes it can be organic stuff as well. And so you name it, anything is possible. Anything could come in on any given day. We get those donations 2 times a week from Food Cycle LA. We also get donations once a week from the Westside Food Bank. So they, on average, bring us about 3,000 pounds a week. Going back to, Food Cycle is rescued food. So they're going around to grocery stores, little restaurants, cafes, bakeries, and things that will be thrown away. They're rescuing them and bringing them to Santa Monica College for the bodega. The Westside Food Bank is a little bit different. They receive donations. People donate their produce to the Westside Food Bank, and then Westside Food Bank delivers that food to us as well. We also have partnerships with a few local bakeries and cafes in the area that bring us, loaves of bread at the end of each day. And so we have some great partners that really help to make sure that we're keeping the shelves stocked at our bodega. So on a weekly basis, the bodega is receiving about 8,000 pounds of food, fresh produce, and again, like shelf-stable foods as well as hygienic products as well in the bodega. About 90% of that food goes to the students, again, for free. They can come 5 days a week and pick up as many groceries as will fit in a bag. The bad apples, I call them, or otherwise the produce that is not good. It didn't get selected in the bodega, or perhaps it didn't even make it onto the bodega shelves, because oftentimes we receive produce that's already too far gone, too late to be rescued. So sometimes immediately we have to figure out what to do with that, because it can't go in the bodega. So it ends up in my hands as the recycling program specialist, because we are going to turn that wasted food into worm food. So Darren, if you could kick us on over to the next slide. This is a few different pictures of what this looks like. So the picture on the left is what it looks like when we receive the food waste from the bodega. So it's things that are no longer good. Sometimes they're already a little moldy as well. What we do first is we run them through this grinder machine that we have in the middle there. It basically turns any produce item you could think of into a baby food. The mush on the right is the mush that comes out of the machine. So that batch happened to be particularly colorful and vibrant and pretty, so I had to snap a picture of it. You could see some carrots in there. I don't know if it was pomegranates or what was given that pink juice, but so it can be hit or miss. Sometimes it's good smelling stuff that goes through there, if it's celery or berries and melons, or otherwise it can also be moldy asparagus and broccoli, and not so pleasant to deal with, but we deal with it all. We handle it all. Darren, if you could actually go to the next slide, please, I'll show you what it looks like. So the worms here on the left, these are the little critters that we're feeding. It's estimated that we have about 500,000 worms, maybe more, maybe less. I think we might even have more than that. But we got two different worm bins. You can see one in the middle picture. It's in the background behind the students there. It's got the lids open. We feed the worms on top. We are able to harvest from the bottom. It's got this crank that scrapes the bottom side of the bin there, and that's how we're able to harvest those worm castings. On the right-hand picture, you can see one of our student workers, Enrique, who is kind of like fluffing up the top layer and getting it prepped for us to feed those worms. But yeah, in that middle picture, that's kind of the best snapshot of what it looks like. You can see the girl on the ground, you know, crouched down in front. She's got the box of produce right next to her. The mushed, mashed up food waste is in the white bucket right underneath the red grinder there. Look how happy these students look to be out there, getting sweaty, getting their hands dirty, learning a little bit something about worms. And so essentially we are, you know, worm farmers, worm wranglers. We you know, take pride in taking care of our worms, and it's a fully functioning waste system. So really, by having these worms on campus, it's such a good teaching tool for students to be able to show them, you know, this closed loop system of like, we're receiving food from off campus that's being rescued all around LA County. Whatever isn't able to be redistributed here on campus, we are processing that on site, and turning it into a valuable resource, and just allowing that to be a teachable process and moment for, you know, any of the students involved. So next slide, please, Darren. It'll show us, we actually process on site in several ways beyond just those worms. So the picture all the way to the left, the first two pictures on the left are our thermophilic composting piles. So this is kind of your typical backyard composting system. We try and fill them up as quickly as possible. So we try and really, you know, fill them up all at once or over the course of about just a week, to really try and just initiate that decomposition and keep the process moving as quickly as possible. If we allow it to build up slowly, it lingers, it takes much longer. We're here to be as efficient as possible and to try and keep things moving, because that food waste is a pipeline. We know the food waste is going to be generated one way or another. So the first two pictures here are in front of our sustainability center. We have these two backyard composters in our front yard, essentially, kind of just to show off how we're doing things around here. In the middle, the picture in the right middle with the two open bays is in our organic learning garden. So we have a garden on campus where we try and have that be our more flexible compost pile, if you will. That's our most demonstratable pile in terms of like allowing the most students to get involved, and it becomes a little bit of a bigger learning experience because so many people get involved. So sometimes, you know, we put in the wrong materials into the compost pile. We have to learn how to mitigate and minimize any of those contamination issues, odor issues, you know, moisture levels, making sure that students are all on the same page. But since there are so many cooks in the kitchen, if you will, this pile tends to go sideways the most often because it's the most available to be messed with. And then on the right, the very right side, we also have a smaller worm bin. So this is like kind of your household worm bin, if you will. So we're also just demonstrating that folks can process their organic waste at home through their own systems. And a worm bin is perhaps the most easily accessible form because it's got the smallest footprint. Even folks in an apartment complex can technically do some worm composting if you could find enough space for it. So really just trying to demonstrate the wide range of processes for decomposing our organic waste, and also trying to promote the ideas that folks can do it on their own as well at home, or however they see fit. Next slide, please, Darren. I just wanted to showcase a little bit of our organic learning garden. If you are at a school, or if you're at any institution really, and if you have a garden, that's the perfect excuse. That's like your best reason right there to start composting. Gardens require soil amendments, and what is compost? It's like a perfect soil amendment that we can add to that garden. So really not only allowing it to be a teachable moment, but allowing it to be a resource that can be used on campus. It is an organic learning garden, so we're employing organic systems and methods of planting and gardening. So composting falls right in line with that. And yeah, again, just trying to, this is part of that food system that we've got on campus. So we're also generating food here. We've got an abundance of, right now, our passion vines are going crazy. So some of the passion fruits that we're harvesting are going to the bodega as well. So we're growing it and we're getting it from all angles. All right, next slide, please, Darren. We're going to start shifting over to post-consumer organics, because that's probably largely what a lot of y'all are dealing with, which is when, folks are using the green bins around campus to throw out, to dispose of their organic waste. So currently we've got about 31 collection bins around campus. We've got them out in public eating areas like around cafes and in the cafeteria. We've got them in the eating quads and just in like the outdoor eating areas that are beyond the cafeteria. And then beyond that, we've also got the little countertop pails that you can see in the left-hand picture with the green lid there. We've got those in some break rooms, and also these the Slim Jims, they call them, with the lid here in the right side picture up top. So we've got different bins in different places, and we've got bins all over the place, and they're collecting, food scraps from all corners of the campus. So we're collecting food waste, we're collecting soiled paper like napkins or the paper clamshells that come from the cafes. And we're also collecting wooden cutlery, because we do distribute wooden, spoons, forks, and knives at the cafes on campus. All this material, since it's combined all together, we have this process by our waste hauler, Athens Services, and we just combine our green bin waste with our landscape material, so that it's all going to an organic waste facility and getting composted all together. Pro tip as well, if if you are storing food, or if food waste will be disposed of and hauled away later, and you are combining it with your landscape waste, you can utilize that landscape waste to kind of like cover up and insulate some of the odors that might be permeating out of the rotting food waste. It can get real lovely out there, but yeah, using some of that landscape brush as a kind of like a cover to like just pile it on top of and try and bury it in there. Good way to handle those odors. Next slide, please. So again, we are collecting food waste and the soiled paper. So some of our challenges, because there are many. So we have, okay, these are supposed to be arrows, the two squares next to each other. So the frequency of pickups on a campus like ours at Santa Monica College, we have nearly 200 waste stations outside where there's a trash and recycling available. Well, in the more locations that we offer organic waste collection, that means there's going to be less waste per bin, simply just because the waste is getting spread out more thinly across more different bins. So if we have more bins that have less waste in there, then we are really just wasting a lot of plastic by servicing all these green bins that are 90% empty. One of the problematic things of the green bins is if it's not in the cafeteria or in like a highly trafficked eating area, they could take a while to fill up. So it's trying to figure out the volume of your container and what's the appropriate volume. If it's too small, one clamshell is going to fill it up immediately. If it's too big, then you're probably going to fill it with plastic bags that are going to be mostly empty most of the time. So finding the volume and also the frequency to go along with that volume for servicing those bins is a tricky part of it. Another one is the odor and pest issues. This is, no surprise to come along with the territory of organic waste. But of course, the longer that the bin goes without being changed, the greater the likelihood that it will become invaded by flies or ants or maggots or any of those things that we are trying to avoid for the servicer as well as the user. We want to make sure that things are user friendly for the folks that are using the bins as well. So one way that we've gone about this is by collecting paper towels from certain bathrooms that from our bathroom within the office. And then we also can collect shredded paper from different departments around campus. So one way that we try to stretch out the lifespan of a bin, let's say we go around and we check on a bin, the bin is only 10% full, it's got orange peels in it and dirty napkins. So it's mostly empty, and so we don't want to change the bin out yet, but we also don't want it to get funky and stinky. So we can kind of insulate the smells in there by placing some shredded paper or some paper towels on top of the waste that's already piled into that green bin, and try and just like dampen it, bury those odors into that bin there so that it doesn't attract pests and it also doesn't permeate those odors out. So that's one way that we've been able to mitigate that. Otherwise, it really is a matter of frequency and just regularly checking around on your bins and regularly changing the bags out as soon as there's any risk factor for odors and or flies. Next slide, please, Darren. Just a couple more. I want to address some of the challenges. So existing infrastructure. I know I've only got a couple of minutes here, but you can see here at Santa Monica College, we have these huge metal, these lovely bins, but they're made by Victor Stanley. They're metal. We've got green bins for recycling and we've got brown bins for landfill. As you might imagine, it's a bit confusing to say, hey, throw your throw your food waste in the green bin. You go around campus, all the green bins here say recycle bottles and cans. So the existing infrastructure that we already have in place is it's working against us. We're actually trying to figure out a way, Darren, if you can go to the next slide, please, that we can split those green bins in half. So Victor Stanley, they do actually make a split lid for these bins. So we're thinking about instead of having the plastic Slim Jim containers like we've already set up and put out in a lot of places, basically just painting the green bins half blue and then making that the recycling side of the bin, and then keeping the green side of the bin as the food waste side. So it is a bit of a challenge. These bins are $1,200 a pop. They might even be more nowadays, but it's not cheap. And once you start multiplying that by all the waste bins that you have to buy for all your different stations, it adds up real quick. So we're trying to figure out ways to avoid having to drop money that we don't necessarily have for all these bins in order to fit into compliance with 1383. Next slide, please, Darren. A couple other challenges: zero waste events. So at SMC, we try to make every event a zero waste event. So if there's food being distributed, we try to have myself out there, student workers, volunteers. The picture on the left kind of demonstrates how we operate. So when folks are throwing away their material, we try and help them decipher, does it go in the green bin, the blue bin, or the landfill bin? The biggest challenge with that is working with other departments that are procuring the event, that are creating the event, and trying to get ahead of the game, working upstream to make sure that the materials that are being used for that event can actually become zero waste events and everything isn't just going into the landfill. So that becomes a collaborative hurdle or obstacle that we got to work through. Education is always a big one, just trying to make folks aware of the fact that there are green bins available, how to use them, what belongs in them, and how they can use them better. And then product procurement. Again, this might involve working with other departments, but like if we're hosting events and if all the plates have the waxy coating on them, then they're not compostable, well, then that was a wasted opportunity where we could have composted those plates. We could have put them to better use and made it a zero waste event. But it's something simple like that could actually, derail your hopes and dreams for having a zero waste event. So it's really staying ahead of the game, thinking upstream, working with the folks who are planning the events. And then next step, so one last challenge that we're trying to figure out how to overcome is taking the paper that's collected from bathrooms around campus and how to get that into our compost. So we know it's a little bit, it can be tricky in terms of hygiene and all that stuff, hazardous materials that might end up in bathroom trash. So we're trying to figure out ways around that, but that's kind of the next thing that we're approaching in this whole organic waste thing. And last slide, Darren, we can kind of just blow right through this one. It's basically just showing that the strictly food waste that we collect around campus from the cafes and from the bodega, we're just processing those on site. But everything that's mixed with paper and food waste, we just give that to our haulers. We let them deal with that. The next slide is my last one, which is just my contact information. I'm here as a resource. I want to be able to, have conversations. Feel free to reach out and ask questions if you want. But thanks for having me, and it's been a privilege and a pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kenny. All right, our next presenter is going to be Liz Whitchurch. And my name is Mallory Burden, and I work with the CalRecycle Local Assistance and market development branch as a supervisor, and I had the privilege of meeting Liz earlier in the year at Cal Poly Humboldt during a site visit. And Liz is the Director of Facilities Operations at Cal Poly Humboldt in Arcata, California. She manages a number of facilities operations on campus, including the refuse and recycling program, as well as grounds maintenance. She graduated with a PhD in neuroscience from the University of Oregon in 2006 and came to Humboldt as faculty in 2012. Liz has been working in facilities for just under 10 years. Liz, if you want to turn on your camera,
Yep.
thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for having me today. I really enjoyed Kenny's presentation just now, and it's a great example of some of the things we would like to do as well. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is how our small school in our rural county has started implementing some of the requirements of SB 1383, and I'll focus specifically on food waste recycling. Humboldt County is a northern county in California, if you're not familiar with it. We have about 135,000 people in the entire county. Our university, Cal Poly Humboldt, recently underwent a name change and focus shift away from being Humboldt State University into being a California State Polytechnic University. And with that, we are emphasizing, we're doing a renewed emphasis on STEM programs and sustainability and experiential learning. We have about 6,000 students right now on campus. We'd like to be twice that size. Most of those students, those 6,000 students, are undergraduates. There's about 1,200 employees on our campus. We have about 100 buildings, 1.8 million square feet interior, and 144 acres around campus. So while we're, relatively small to mid-sized with the student count, we do have a fairly good footprint on campus. All right, if you could do one slide forward. All right. So as I mentioned, I'm going to focus on our food waste collections program. We've been doing food waste collection for quite a while here at Cal Poly Humboldt. Because we are rural, our current waste haulers don't have a organics collection program as of yet. And so we've been managing our food waste for many years, making do with what we have in the area. So our food waste collections, we went through some of the same problems Kenny's team is going through. We had old infrastructure. Everything was one color. Everything, in our case, happened to be black. So in the last couple of years, we've gone through and just powder coated the tops of the outdoor bins to reflect our composting and our recycling being different colored. So that consistent color scheme throughout our interior and exterior bins. That's what we're going for. That's what hopefully will help us with future waste stream contamination problems. But just in the last couple of years, we've really focused on interior collections as well. And so we've been adding some bins to our collections here. On the left-hand side, there's 3 pictures. The top first picture is our 3 exterior bins, landfill, compost, and recycling. And then the next one down is the 4-gallon foot pedal compost bin that we've added to our bins in areas around campus that are considered break rooms or small kitchens where small groups of people routinely eat. So we've added about 100 of those across our campus. In the future, we're looking to do a multi-stream waste collection in areas that are more public spaces where we expect people to be gathering outside of classrooms. We're not doing this inside classrooms, and we received funding, so we're working on purchasing these bins that you see here on the bottom left. On the right-hand side are bins that we use for our housing collections program. So housing collections, we have, as I mentioned, the 6,000 students that are on campus. We have about 2,000 students that live on campus in residence halls. Now, not all of those residence halls have suite-style kitchens inside of them. But for those residence halls who do have kitchens inside, we're allowing, actually all of the residence halls are given this option actually, but we're saying if you are wanting to opt in to our food collections program, we give you the bin at the top right there, kind of your standard countertop 2-gallon waste bin. And then we provide the outside of their buildings a place for them to dump their own organics collections. So you'll notice that the next two pictures on the right-hand side are a picture of our outside 35-gallon food waste collections around our housing areas. And you'll notice there's a carabiner on there. When we first implemented this last year, we found a very, very large amount of waste contamination in our food waste bins outside of our residence halls. And it didn't matter what type of signage we put on those bins. For some reason, either folks weren't seeing the signs or reading the signs. We were getting trash. We were getting bags and bags of trash, even though right next to it was a dumpster where landfill should go. And so what we did is we just stuck a cable with a carabiner, not a lock, just a carabiner that is different than anywhere else on campus. So anywhere you go on campus to throw away your waste, you wouldn't see a carabiner, but then it made people kind of stop and pause. And we made this, big orange and red sign that said, hey, this is just for food waste, things that would feed a worm, no plastic. So basically using those hopefully trigger words to get folks to just think about what they put in their bin before they do it. And since we put those carabiners on there with that kind of bright signage, our food waste contamination has gone way down in the housing areas. So we're really excited about that. Our next step here obviously would be to implement this more widely. This year we have, out of the 2,000 students that are there, we only have about 50 folks that have opted into this program. The reason we did it as an opt-in is because every person who opts in gets a one-on-one training with our local sustainability student team. So we wanted to get that going to kind of spread the word. Last year there were about 50. This year there are 50 now, but it's growing every day. The word is spreading. People are excited about it. So we've purchased more of these countertop bins and we're hoping to grow that side of things. So our waste collection system is fueled by our staff, which go around to campus on the left-hand side. So the main campus areas, our custodial staff empties all of the compost bins into exterior food waste bins. And then our refuse and recycling team collects all the food waste bins. And in the academic areas, the main academic buildings, the compost bins are emptied nightly. Exterior, the compost bins are picked up weekly. In our dining areas, so we do have dining commons for those folks who live on campus and don't have a kitchen. Our dining commons, we collect back of the house scraps and excess food that wasn't reused, or what was the rescued. I love that word for food. For the food that's not rescued, we collect that nightly as well. And all of those collections go into a large, what we call bio bin. It is a shipping container that's been converted into an aeration system that allows us to collect up to 18 cubic yards of food waste from the dining facilities, from our on-campus collections that we do, and then also we're adding our housing collections as well into that bio bin. Could you go next slide, please? So our bio bin, as I mentioned, is something we built in-house. We modified a shipping container to do this, added an aeration system. It does require power, so wherever it is, we have to be close to electrical. It's also quite smelly towards the end. The bio bin is picked up monthly by our waste hauler and dropped off at our vermiculture collaborator, a organization known as the Local Worm Guy organization. Of course, we pay for the waste hauler. We pay about $3,200 a year for just the bio bin hauling alone. We haul it about once a month. And then we pay the local worm guy annually about $15,000 to take all of our food waste. We generate annually about 158,000 pounds of total food waste. And of course, that's mixed a little bit with wood chips within our system. When we start every month fresh, we line the bottom of that bio bin with about 3 inches of fresh chipped wood chips to kind of add carbon and increase the viability of the stuff at the end of the month so the local worm guy can take it. That took months of back and forth with the local worm guy to say like, hey, is our product something that will feed your worms? And the pictures here are from that local worm guy's vermiculture production facility. And we've hit on something that's been working, and now we've been doing it, I think, for at least 8 years with this person. So it's working out really well. I mean, as I mentioned before, our waste haulers don't take organics yet. I keep calling them. I think it's on I know for sure that they've got a plan in place. It just hasn't been put to use yet. So this is really our only option if we don't have places on campus to manage our own food waste. Now, in an effort to try to be more sustainable and more self-sufficient, if you go to the next slide, we did purchase a 2,500 pound capacity dehydrator last year from EcoRich. This should take all the same items or all the same material that we normally send the local worm guy. And it was designed for us. The size of it matches our food waste generation, and actually is a little bit bigger than what we needed because we were hoping to expand our food waste collections, as I mentioned, in housing. And this was sold to us as a piece of machinery that would produce water and steam as its primary quote waste output. So we vent that steam away from the housing residence halls. And that material at the end of 24 hours looks a little bit like that picture at the top right-hand side. So it turns from something that was similar to what Kenny showed. There's a grinder at the top that grinds all the food that we put in, and it turns it into something that looks a little bit like coffee grounds in about 24 hours. Now that does take a bit of troubleshooting, obviously, to get the right temperatures. It heats it up. The steam, comes out. But as we were trying it out last year, one of our challenges with this machine, it was definitely big enough. It definitely produced what we wanted it to produce, but it had a very significant odor. And it's been described as barbecued Fritos, but times a million. It's very, very strong and disagreeable. So we stopped using the dehydrator and been working with EcoRich. They've been a fantastic vendor to help us troubleshoot that. And we have not yet solved it. And as I mentioned, it's been on campus for about a year, but we are not giving up. We are hoping to make it work. If you could go to the next slide, the output of this 24-hour dehydration cycle, which by the way is also incorporating a biological component that is inoculated with microbes that help facilitate the decomposition, at least in that 24 hours at high temperatures. We can take that output and bring it over to our composting piles, which are shown here. These are on in-house composting piles where we keep some of our green waste. You can see grass clippings on the right-hand side. We do mulch our own, smaller branches and things. And we can combine that about 50-50 with the output of the dehydrator. So on the bottom left-hand side, the dehydrator has a giant auger in the middle of it that rotates and agitates the material on the inside as it's being heated up and worked on by the microbes that are in the dehydrator. And then that comes out, we put it on the left-hand side, we mix it 50-50 with the grass clippings on the right-hand side, And within about a month, it becomes something that we can add directly to the top layer of our mulched beds as a fertilizer. So we've had it tested. It's very similar to other compost piles that we've had going around campus as well. It's been used so far that first week while we had it going, and we're receiving feedback, constructive feedback about the smell. We did take that output and we created our own compost from it. And we've used it to reseed grassy areas and as potting medium. And it seems to work fairly well. We did find we needed to screen it because it improved the texture and allowed us to use it in more ways. Some comments from our folks that use this is that there's many worms and insects in that composting material. It looks good. It has that slight odor for a little bit longer, but it does dissipate with time. And after the end, after 30 days or so, it is something that we can use. So this is a quick overview of what Cal Poly Humboldt has been working on with our food waste program, our collections, and some of the composting we're trying to do. And we are hopeful for the future and our dehydrator that it will work for us and help us be more self-sufficient. And that's what I have. My contact information was on that first slide, and I'm happy as well to be here for a resource of any areas that might want to ask me questions. Thank you.
I believe Michelle is next.
Yes. Thank you, Liz, for your presentation. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michelle Chavez, and I work for CalRecycle as the local assistance liaison for Marin County. I would like to introduce Lisa Clark, who is the founder and executive director of Sustainable Marin Schools, an organization that is dedicated to decreasing carbon emission and promoting sustainability in Marin County K-12 public schools. Originally an epidemiologist, Lisa transitioned into sustainability work after realizing that climate change poses one of the most significant threats to public health. Her journey into sustainability began with her involvement in zero waste programs at her children's elementary schools, which inspired her to create sustainable Marin schools. Lisa is passionate about engaging students in climate action and supporting schools in achieving their environmental goals through various programs, a focus on waste reduction, energy efficiency, and environmental education. Please give a warm welcome to Lisa.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you. Next slide, please. So as most people in the room already know, public schools contribute significantly to greenhouse gas emissions, and these emissions contribute to climate change, which affect ultimately children the most. And so while schools have this immense potential for climate action, frequently they don't have the support they need to implement and maintain sustainability initiatives like zero waste. And as a result, their green programs tend to fail to affect lasting changes in school operations. So Sustainable Marin Schools, our goal is to enable transformative, equitable, and systemic change within the school communities, ensuring a sustainable future for all children. And I have a quote here from the K-12 Climate Action Plan from the Aspen Institute. I have this here because a lot of our program really is based on that report. And if you're interested in working with K-12 schools, it's a really good resource. Next slide, please. So our program offers 4 core programs: zero waste, environmental education, campus greening and resilience, and decarbonization. And today I'll be focusing on zero waste. That's actually what we end up spending most of our time on, especially in the first year we're in the program. Could I have the next slide, please? We partner with the Nevada Unified School District, and we are really fortunate to have this relationship. NUSD has really excellent support at the leadership level, both from the school board and superintendent. And the superintendent is Dr. Tracy Smith, and she actually previously was a principal at an elementary school and had initiated her own zero waste program there that was really successful. So it's really wonderful to have someone with that kind of deep knowledge about zero waste and also who understands why it's important in schools. NUSD is the largest school district in Marin County with 15 schools. Several of those schools are Title I or majority minority, and the district has limited access to funding compared to other districts in the county. That said,
Lisa,
yes.
sorry to interrupt, but there are some folks that are having trouble hearing you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I don't, if you can maybe speak a little louder or get
Oh,
closer,
sure.
well, maybe that would be helpful.
Sure.
Thank you so much, and I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Let's see, where did I leave off? In 2022, NUSD allowed Sustainable Marin Schools to initiate a zero waste pilot program in one of their elementary schools. And then during that year, the school diverted about 50,000 pounds of food waste from landfill to composting facilities. And based on pre and post waste audits, what the school was compliant with SB 1383. And that's really mostly due to student-led composting monitors. The students at that school were very engaged. Next slide, please. For 2023, we were able to expand the program to include 5 schools, 4 elementary and 1 high school. And that is with the assistance from 6 California Climate Action Corps fellows. If you are not familiar with Climate Action Corps fellows, they're provided by the state of California. The state of California actually pays their salary, and so they are free to host sites that are providing them the opportunity to learn and participate in these programs. The fellows were then able to train over 1,500 students on how to recycle and how to compost. They diverted over 3,500 pounds of edible foods. And so most of that actually went back into the kitchen, but some of it did go to students and families in need. They were also able to divert over 140,000 pounds of food waste. They cut milk waste in half at 3 schools by introducing milk dispensers. We provided recycling and composting training for our English learning families. And fellows also worked with kitchen staff to cut down on repackaging foods, which was actually quite successful. The kitchen staff tended to stop doing things like wrapping a hamburger in a single-use product and instead just placed it on the student's tray. Next slide, please. At the end of that year, last year, all 4 participating elementary schools were compliant with SB 1383. Next slide. And at Novato High School, they were successfully composting and recycling in and around the school cafe. Now, the cafe really only serves about 20% of those 1,500 students. So we're really hoping to expand that this year and work more closely with the environmental groups on campus. But we did make progress. We were able to set up a food share table that was very popular with students. We were able to swap out condiment packets for condiment dispensers. We set up all of their waste stations and provided signage that was specific to what the high school students are disposing. Next slide, please. So for the 2024-25 school year, we are expanding our programs thanks to additional funding from the County of Marin and the Marin Community Foundation. This year, we will have 8 California Climate Action Corps fellows working in 10 schools, including 7 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and 2 high schools. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to go over best practices quickly because I think a lot of people are already aware of these. But we really focus on reducing waste by cutting packaging, getting rid of all the solo trash cans that are ubiquitous on school campuses, setting up waste stations, and we like to include recyclables, compostables, trash, leftover milk, and edible foods. And then, of course, providing recycling and composting training for absolutely anyone who will listen. We really want to get everyone who's producing waste on campus to know where it goes. So we meet with students, teachers, kitchen staff, custodians, and sometimes even parents. Next slide. We also work hard to recruit, train, and really help student compost monitors. We'll also put together a schedule for them and post it where they can see it and where yard supervisors can see it. So if kids forget that it's their day, the yard supervisors can go and remind them. We provide, of course, the equipment for the zero waste stations, but we also provide equipment for paper towel composting in the classrooms and bathrooms, grabbers for the students, and if the kids want them, we'll provide the green vests. We also lead end of year cleanouts for teachers. So anyone who has done that knows that that is a lot of work, but it's also the teachers, they love it. It's their favorite part of our program. And so it's important to continue that. Next slide, please. So here are some other helpful approaches to zero waste that we have found work well in Nevada. Of course, having a fellow who can work daily with students for the first year while building up a student-led program, that's incredibly helpful. Having school lunch specific signage, we find that, it's not just the little kindergartners who benefit from that, but actually the grown-ups too. Setting up school site sustainability committees is really important. We have that set up in one of our schools and we're ready to launch another one this year. Hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have it in about 4 schools. And the sustainability committee for the school site, they can really talk about what's important to them. What do they want to see in their schools? But they can also support the programs that, the zero waste programs that we've put so much time, energy, and money into getting up and running. These sustainability committees can make sure that it, in every new year that it's up and running again. I think having student engagement in other activities is important. Some students are not as excited about sorting waste. I don't know why. I actually love it, but things like Earth Month celebrations and activities. We also engage school organizations like the PTA, Beautification, English Language Advisory Commission, and so what the goal there is, for example, in Nevada schools, the PTA provides funding for parents to go and buy party supplies. So this year, the PTA is actually just going to, ahead of the school year, they've bought all of the compostable foodwares and decorations for their events. And so parents don't have to go out and buy it. We have something that is actually compostable in Nevada that can be used for these events. And that's going to make it so much easier for the students to know where they're supposed to put their waste. Next slide. Other helpful approaches, we always let our custodians know in advance that we are going to reduce their workload. They don't usually believe us at first, but all of our custodians are happy once they're in the program, see how it works, they're really happy and acknowledge that we have decreased the amount of work they do. And that's even when you figure in some of them are helping sort waste. Or do things like clean out milk buckets or wash out the toters. So we're really happy with those relationships, and it's really important to us that the custodians are happy. We also provide incentives to students who are giving up, recess time. They're not able to study during that time or hang out with their friends if they're helping us with compost monitoring. And so the elementary school kids are pretty easy. They love a party. They love gift certificates for activities like roller skating or the zoo. And then middle school and high school students, they are a little more challenging, but they do like cold drinks. They like gift cards, usually to fast food restaurants. They like raffles, and sometimes they will work for service hours. You'll see in the picture on the bottom right, those are 2 high school students who were working on compost monitoring, and every day that they worked, they were entered into a raffle. I think it was like a $25 gift certificate. And so they worked together and they actually both won. They had the exact same amount. So of course we ended up giving them each a gift certificate because they had worked so hard. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to read through all this, but I kind of want to shift gears a little bit from this, this success and results we had last year to kind of more of the process. Like, how do you even get into a school to start your zero waste programs? And I don't think there's one right answer to that. I think there are lots of different ways, but access to schools, it takes persistence and it takes time. I talked to a lot of people, everyone on this list that I have and more. So the people that were most helpful for me were really from the San Mateo Office of Education. The sustainability coordinator there at the time was Andrew Yagoyan. Also, city sustainability coordinators in Marin County, garden teachers, and engaged parents that were recommended by everyone in this group. So really just my path was I talked to the Novato sustainability coordinator who has a child in the district. She connected me with some parents who were really engaged in sustainability and zero waste. One of them is a garden teacher who happened to know the superintendent, and she made that introduction. So this is, a very roundabout way, but it's really nice to have someone who can introduce you to the superintendent to kind of get these conversations started. Next slide, please. Okay, so I am not an advocate for shameless self-promotion, but it is really important to build external support and collaboration. And that's because change is hard. Even if you have a successful zero waste program, you are going to encounter barriers. And so it's really essential that you get the word out about your program's success, that you build relationships with people who appreciate your work and who benefit from your work and are willing to tell others that they support your work. And so I really did an outreach campaign to talk to as many people as I could who thought would be interested, including, county supervisors, representatives, CalRecycle, and if you can get something in the local newspaper, then that would be absolutely amazing. Next slide, please. Communication is another challenge when it comes to zero waste programs. And I think that's because there are just so many different stakeholders involved, and each of the stakeholders has a different priority. Most of them don't have a lot of time to spend meeting, discussing programs. And a lot of people in these groups are not actually communicating much with each other, or maybe not communicating at all. And so just in the box below, there were just some key things that I learned while doing this program that you may or may not find helpful. But the district might occasionally feel uncomfortable that there's an external organization that's so deeply enmeshed with their internal operations. And building trust and communication is an ongoing goal, and it's also an ongoing process. Next slide, please. Clear communication is also really important. Miscommunication and misunderstanding really should just be expected given the number of stakeholders that are involved. And that's why I do recommend creating a communication plan as close to the beginning of working with a district as you can. Again, just another important thing that I learned in this process is that as an external organization working within a district, you may not fully understand why decisions are made the way they are. And this can really require a lot of trust and patience at times. And just knowing that this is part of the process may help when there are some more trying times that you encounter. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to go into a great deal of depth into a communication plan, but these are the core elements that I think are important to get out to really make communication effective. So having a clear objective that includes the purpose and goals of the communication plan, identifying all of your key stakeholders and their needs, because their needs are going to vary. If you're talking to the school board, you're talking very high level. If you're talking to teachers, you might be talking about specific lesson plans. You need to establish communication channels and a schedule. So are you going to be talking in person? Are you going to be talking by Zoom? Are you going to be communicating through emails or newsletters? And really figuring out a schedule when you're going to meet. Superintendents are very, very busy. And so setting up times that you can meet with them throughout the year in advance is really helpful. Develop a clear message for each stakeholder group. Again, different groups are interested in different information, and so there's no point in including something that the school board members aren't going to be interested in, but it might be incredibly relevant to another group. It's important to monitor and evaluate communication effectiveness to make sure that things are going the way you want them to, and then to be receptive to feedback so that you can better align your communication. And of course, it's always important to maintain transparency and consistency. Next slide, please. I do want to touch a little bit on funding opportunities. Our program provides all the services, zero waste and otherwise, free of charge. And so we depend on outside funding. There are a lot of opportunities. You've probably heard it said that there are now an unprecedented amount of funds available for sustainability and zero waste. And so it's not just that there are more funds available, but there are actually a lot more support in the application process than there used to be, as agencies are realizing they need to open up who is getting accepted for these grants so that it better represents the communities that they serve. And so this really is a great time to be working in zero waste. You can get funding occasionally from local waste haulers. You can get funding from the state. I only have the example here of California Climate Action Corps, but having 6 to 8 fellows helping you on these programs helps immensely. There are county funds, both from the government and from foundations. There are, of course, zero waste organizations that focus on schools that can be very helpful. And then there are the federal funds like IRA, which I have not dipped my toes into yet, but that I am looking forward to getting on board with that, hopefully this next year. And I just want to remind myself and others that even if you are not sure about these applications, because these applications at the federal level are more complicated, you can still apply for funding to hire someone to help you write those grants, an expert. So keep that in mind. Next slide, please. And last, but I think definitely not least important, is how do we maintain these zero waste programs over the long term? And this is something that we've all seen time and time again. We get these great programs going, everybody's engaged, everything's going smoothly, and then the teacher who is leading it leaves, the parent who's leading it leaves, there's a new principal. There are so many different, a pandemic hits. There are so many different ways that these programs can be derailed. And so I really pulled heavily from the San Mateo Office of Education, their Environmental Literacy and Sustainability Initiative for this. This was put together by Andrew Yagoyan, and I've tweaked it so that it actually aligns better with how things work in Novato. And so I really recommend checking out the San Mateo Office of Education website. They have a lot of valuable information there. So for maintaining these programs, I think what's key is that there are several levels of support, that this isn't just bottom up or just top down, but it's both. And so we're starting out at the school site level. We've got our student clubs, mostly environmental clubs and mostly in high schools. From there, you've got these student representatives from those clubs. And above that is the school site sustainability committee. And all these groups are working together and supporting each other. Beyond the school site level, you have the district. And so at the very bottom there in the light purple or light blue, it says district-wide student network. Now that is not something we have yet in Novato schools, but last year we had 2 young women from different high schools who worked together to pass an electrification resolution, and it did. It got passed by the school board. So I think having something like a district-wide student network could be incredibly helpful in getting positive movement for zero waste. Next up on there is sustainable or zero waste organizations, and that's where I put Sustainable Marin Schools. We work with all of these groups, and we provide support. We plant seeds of ideas that we hope that the district will embrace. But really, the real decision making comes from the district-wide sustainability committee and the district, of course, the district decision makers, the board and leadership team. Now, the district-wide sustainability committee, the idea behind that is that they figure out exactly what the district is interested in terms of zero waste, in terms of sustainability, and that they work at this level of, okay, what are other schools doing right now? Does this work better than our program? Should we initiate that? Should we look for funding? They actually go through all those steps and get the funding for it. And then they provide support for the school sustainability committee. For example, if for some reason it's faltering one year, then the district-wide sustainability committee can step in and make sure that their zero waste programs are up and running. And then finally, of course, the district decision makers are getting input from all these different groups and deciding which programs they want to support. I think there's another level to this that's really important, and that would be the County Office of Education. In San Mateo, they do have a position specifically related to sustainability, and I think that that is something that it can be really powerful when you have the help from the County Office of Education, especially in terms of working to really promote a culture of sustainability, providing education for and training for teachers, providing professional development for students, especially high school students. So really the overarching point of this slide is that you need all of these things working together to maintain zero waste programs for the long term. And with that, next slide, please. I would just like to say thank you. I would love to hear from people who can advise me on some of the issues that we face. I would love to talk to other people about our programs. And next slide. I just wanted to give a shout out to the California Climate Action Corps fellows who worked so hard last year and made our program possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing everything you're doing with Sustainable Marin Schools. It's my pleasure to introduce Laura Gonzalez Espina. And before I do that, I just wanted to mention that I'm the local representative for the Sacramento area. So I work with Sacramento a lot. As far as Laura goes, Laura is a waste and sustainability analyst with California State University, Sacramento. Laura holds a BS in biology from Emmanuel University, an MA in global sustainability with a concentration in water sustainability from the University of South Florida, and a graduate certificate in climate change and sustainability from the same institution. Laura leads efforts to reduce the university's environmental impact and greenhouse gas emissions with a focus on achieving zero waste by 2030. And Laura, you are free to start whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Zach. Hi, everyone. I think that was a great introduction for me, but I'm going to give you some context about our campus before we get into SB 1383 and what are we doing here. So Sac State, or Sacramento State, is located in the city of Sacramento. We are proud to serve minority institution students. We have over 300, my gosh, I'm thinking. We have over 4,000 trees and 300 acres of a campus and about 66 buildings. We service 30,000 students and about 4,000 employees. Next slide, please. So when the legislation came up, we saw a great opportunity to standardize our campus, make sure we have bin and signage consistency across campus. So no matter where you were, everything will look the same to help educate the community. So we work really close with our campus beautification department and marketing and the Office of Sustainability with custodian and grounds to find what was the best locations for these centralized collection systems that now collect compost, mixed recycling, and landfill in every single building across campus and outdoors, including main quads, athletics facilities, and walkways. Next slide. We know to get in compliance, we need to be more than just us leading the effort. We need to make sure we build partnerships and work across all the different organizations across campus. We do have a zero waste goal set by our past president to be zero waste by 2030, and we keep pushing forward with that. And we saw SB 1383 as an opportunity to come stronger to our goals and use it to include more compliance and participation within the campus community. So we start working with our custodians, our grounds teams, our campus events, housing, auxiliaries, because we are a public institution, but we have other organizations that operate within the campus. They even have their own buildings and their own contracts with food providers and their own ways of hauling contract. So we need to make sure that they know what we're doing, they know they are part of this, and we work with them to achieve the goals. Next slide. And we can have all the plans that you saw in the past slide in place, and we can have all these conversations, but we know that without education, we are never going to get close to meet those goals. So we have tried a multiple way effort to make sure we're doing our part. So the University Union is one of those buildings that always have the most struggles regarding contamination. We know it is a building that occupies mostly by our students. It has different restaurants on site. They have conference space. They have offices. And we give it a shot to try Oscar Sort, which is an AI smart bin that is placed in the main area, and anybody, and is programmed with all the different products that are served on campus. So whenever someone walks by the bin, the camera will detect what it is, and it tells you in which bin goes. If you put it in the wrong bin, we'll also tell you you are wrong and tell you where to put it next time. And we get reporting every month of most common items that were misplaced or another statistics. So the picture is a little blurry, but like the sign right there shows that, oh, pizza boxes are actually compostable. Like your napkins, please put them in the compost next time. That way, that message rotates, and it's always education going around for the students. We also try to make waste fun, and we create a game that lives in our website, and it's a training. It actually goes with all the different products. It has the 3 bins, and it has 6 levels. If you pass all 6 levels, you get a certificate that you're now in compliance and a waste expert on campus, and you can claim a prize from our office. Besides that, we do employee training for all the departments in person and online, and some trash talks campaigns across campus with zero waste ambassadors, making sure any event has information on how to properly dispose their waste. And we also get one-on-one experience with the students. Next slide. So we have a very extensive on-site compost program that was launched back in 2017 with a grant to be as campus as a living lab. So the composting and organics management on campus was launched with the idea that we have over 4,000 trees, and we're going to say it here shortly in a few weeks. In this time of the year, all the leaves fall, and we were paying our hauler to take the leaves out, but we were also paying to buy compost for our campus in a year basis. So a professor and the Office of Sustainability and Facilities work together to put together this grant for a space where we can compost the leaves on campus and create our own compost and soil amendment. From that, the backyard was born. So it's bioconversion and agriculture collaborative. It's in the corner of campus, and we have a lot of pre-consumer and landscape organic management in there. So we have a windrow from the leaves from the campus that works as a hot compost, a big pile. We collect it when the leaf season is, we take it to the backyard, it's watered down and covered with tarps. It gets mixed probably once a month and do the same process. And the bacteria uses the oxygen from the water to decompose the leaves, and in about 9 to 6 months, depending on how often you turn it and how much the bacteria health is going, you can get finished compost at the time. We use a lot of that compost on campus on site, and we also donate the rest. We expanded to vermicompost and worm bins, just like we saw earlier, that we use all the kitchen pre-consumer food waste. We mainly use 3 or 4 kitchens on campus that has mostly vegetables, because worms are really picky and they don't like to eat a lot of the stuff. So from that, we realized we needed something else for the other stuff that so often make in those bins. And we created a small hot compost bins where we use the Berkeley method to decompose it. We mix it with some of the leaves, and we have that. We also collect all the coffee grounds and coffee filters from all 6 coffee shops on campus, and they are taken to the backyard to be processed with the worms or the hot compost. Recently, about 3 months ago, we got a biodigester. It's an anaerobic biodigester that is small to be as a demonstration site. We got it from another campus in the CSU who couldn't operate it, and we took it over. It was new. We are just starting the process, but what we're doing is we partnered with our kitchen catering team for campus, and we collect all their pre-consumer and not edible recovery food from events. And we process about 3 to 6 buckets, 5-gallon buckets to the digester. And we use the gas on campus. I think I'll tell you in the next slide how we do it. And the overall part of the, oh, perfect. So like I say, like all the compost we collect from the worms and the pile and the hot composting we use mostly on campus and our campus garden, but we do generate more than we can use, and we donate it to SAC Unified schools, community gardens, parks, or any community member that reach out that is looking to have started their own project. And the biogas, we convert it to electricity using a generator, and we store it in a battery that later on powers events on campus. So instead of having a gas generator run to keep the food warm or the music system going when a party or an event is happening in the quad, we use food waste to create electricity to power the event. And the fertilizer for the from the digestate, we use it in the campus planters. And we are working with a faculty that's looking to do some research on it to see what properties are coming and where, how much we can use and where to make sure this goes in the right way. Okay, next slide. So the garden is mostly where most our compost and organic treated waste goes into it, because we as an office runs it and is designed to combat food insecurity on campus. So everything we grow with the compost we generate from our own waste, it's donated to our students and is make sure everybody has access to fruits and vegetables. Next slide. Another key part of our program on SB 1383, we wanted to make sure we have visible data that we can have our campus community and anyone interested in seeing. We are a public university, we have a public record, and we are committed to do our best on this part. So we build a dashboard working with a waste hauler, getting the weights of every single bin on campus and creating diversion rates and compliance numbers so we can check how much organic waste, recycling, and landfill is generated on campus on a monthly basis. This particular picture you're seeing is from our dining commons, which is our biggest and most used cafeteria on campus. It serves our 2,000 students living on campus, anybody with a meal plan that wants to eat on there. So they serve about 6,000 meals a day, and they were one of the biggest generators. So we started tracking, and you can see in the left corner, the yellow used to be the landfill. On year to year, the green, our compost has grown. And we use this data to make changes and improvements and trainings. And later on, next slide, we apply for a CalRecycle grant to actually have a composter on site to process that food, because we are doing our best and we are hauling it through our waste hauler to an organics facility, but why not use it on campus and process it here? So we got the CalRecycle organic trans from the last cycle, and we use the Biotech M4, which is a composter, not a dehydrator. And it does meet the parameter of the temperature to kill pathogens, but then we can let it sit in our backyard until it's finished and use it on campus. And we actually specify we're gonna donate most of it to our SAC Unified school partners so they can continue their community gardens. Right now, it's building, is in the build process. I think the manufacturing finish deadline is September 27th, so we have like a week left, and we hope to get it on campus on the first week of November. All right, I think next slide is my contact information, and feel free to reach out if you guys have any questions.
Right. Hello, everyone. Oops. My name is Laura Chain, and I'm an environmental scientist in the local assistance branch. I want to give a round of applause for our presenters and extend a huge thank you to you all. We're so grateful that you could share your programs, and we thank you for your participation. Before we open up the floor to questions, here's a reminder of some of the respectful expectations in this space during our discussion time. This includes being open to sharing new perspectives, being mindful of others waiting to ask questions, and speaking respectfully. Next slide, please, Darren. For this webinar, we will be using the Q&A function. So please type a summary of your question into the Q&A pane, and you may use the chat pane to share information on or resources with other participants, but please don't put questions into the chat. We will not be monitoring the chat for questions, and if you don't see the Q&A pane, please make sure you have the most updated version of Zoom. My colleagues and I will be filtering through your questions, and once called upon, please unmute yourself and state your name, affiliation, and restate your question. If your question is geared towards a specific panelist, please note that as well. We'll also be monitoring our SLCP inbox throughout the chat. You may send peer share requests, feedback, and panelist questions to the email on the slide. Please use the subject line SB 1383 chat with CalRecycle. If you cannot unmute yourself or you're unable to use the Q&A pane, go ahead and send your questions to the SLCP inbox. If we do not get to your questions during the Q&A session, don't fret, we will have your land representative get back to you. Now, I'll pass the floor to Zach to begin our Q&A session.
All right, everyone, let's begin with our Q&A. Our first question was from Shira Lane. I believe she's not in the chat anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and read that one aloud myself. And this one was directed for Kenny. The question is, Kenny, did you work with the local Trader Joe's or with corporate? So Kenny, go ahead and unmute yourself and answer that question.
Hey, y'all. So yeah, I did not work because we have a partner, Food Cycle LA, who deals with all the food rescue efforts. They're the ones that deal with Trader Joe's, but I believe it's on a local basis. I believe each individual Trader Joe's kind of has the authority and ability to kind of deal with the waste as they see fit. So I'm not exactly sure, but from what I've heard, Trader Joe's seems to be pretty straightforward and streamlined, and they're happy to work along with food rescue organizations. So in that sense, I've heard good stuff, but I don't work with them personally.
Perfect. Thank you, Kenny. All right. Our next question is from Jenny Thompson. And that was a question about the household worm bins. Jenny, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and read that question out loud for us. Okay. It seems like Jenny is not able to unmute herself, so I'll go ahead and read that one too. The question is, can the links to the household worm bins be shared? And I believe that was also a question for Kenny.
Yeah, I had responded in the chat that I don't have the exact bin manufacturer or anything. And additionally, I think the bins that we were using are not ideal in that they don't invite as much airflow as we would need for a properly functioning bin. So we've actually had to drill our own holes and stuff into our bins. So I think any Google or Amazon search for a backyard compost bin will give you plenty of options, and that would be my best bet.
All right. Thanks, Kenny. I have two questions here from Ron Keller. I'm going to be reading both of these out loud. The first question was, have you ever combined other compostable material with food scraps, such as farm waste and compostable products? Kenny, another one for you.
Yeah, so I forgot to mention this in the presentation, but basically, yeah, we partner with a local community garden, and they actually stockpile in large amounts of horse bedding. So another soil amendment. It's basically horse poop mixed in with wood shavings. So that would be probably the only outside, material that we're adding beyond just food waste, and we mix that in with the baby food that we get out of our food grinder, and that's kind of what gives us a little bit more of a bit of composition to our to the stuff that we're feeding the worms, rather than just feeding them the liquid goop. So we kind of amend that with the horse bedding, which is horse poop mixed with wood shavings. So yeah, beyond that, that's about the only thing that we're really taking it beyond just food waste. But yeah, good question.
All right, thank you for answering. And the second question for you, Kenny, was again from Ron Keller. The question was, do you use plastic to collect food scraps?
Yeah, so we use plastic bags in our Slim Jim receptacles. That's for several reasons, but essentially it's a liner so that we don't get the bin dirty, but also there are 0 composting facilities in the state of California that actually accept bioplastics as an allowable feedstock. So we don't use bioplastics. If we're using the countertop pails, essentially we do a little swap deal where every time we replace that, we give them a clean one and take the dirty one, and we take the dirty one back to our office. We put the material in the compost pile and we rinse those out with the hose. So we use plastic, and what we're sending off site in plastic bags goes through a depackager, a bag shredder, if you will, that shreds open the plastic bags. The plastic is removed and all the organic material is dispersed from within it. So we do use plastic. That was an obstacle that we had to overcome. Like, do we go with bioplastics? But in the long scheme of things, they don't hold up with weight, and they're also not accepted at our composting facilities. So there's really no point in using those bioplastics when we have, it is unfortunate to be using the good old fossil fuel plastics, but that is unfortunately just kind of the situation that we've found ourselves in.
All right. Thank you for answering all those questions, Kenny. The next question we have is directed at Laura with Sac State. This question was from Tammy Stolzenthaler, and this was about the computer application that Sac State was using to track their waste stats. Tammy, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and read that question out loud for us, please? And sorry, it looks like I just got word that Tammy is not with us anymore in the chat anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and read her question out loud. It was, what is the name of the Savvy computer application that is tracking your waste stats at Sacramento State?
We collect the data using Excel, and then we push it to the dashboard with Power BI, which is another Microsoft software.
All right. What was the name of that software again? Sorry, one more time.
Power BI.
Perfect. Thank you, Laura. Okay. We have a question here that's really open to all presenters. So anyone who's interested in answering this, you'd be welcome to. This question was asked by Ethan Stewart. Ethan, if you're still here with us, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and read that question out loud?
Hey there. So I'm with California State Parks, and we've had some recent issues where our food bins have had like a single aluminum can in them, and we've been getting fines for it. So any advice for avoiding contamination in the food waste containers? And then a part of our problem is that all of our food waste is sorted by the public, and as is the public can't seem to tell the difference between a trash and recycle bin, even when it's really well labeled.
All right, thank you, Ethan. So for any of our presenters, if you're interested in taking a crack at that question, go ahead and unmute yourself and you can answer now.
I think I'll try. We have a campus-like setting, so we struggle a lot too with contamination in certain areas. And what we find that is very useful is constant monitoring of it, but I know that's hard. And also having public engagement side, so like having a table when it's a large event in a park, or like it's a specific days where you see it's gonna be more people, just kind of like reminding people where things go. And that in-person communication of like, oh, wait, don't put it in there. This is actually recyclable. That hopefully that education that is constant will probably change their behavior.
All right, thank you so much, Laura. And if any other presenters are interested in jumping in here, I'll just give a few seconds of wait time in case you want to unmute yourself and share your thoughts on this question.
No, contamination is a huge issue for us as well, and we always just try to promote flyers and signage, and even at zero waste events is like taping up like a physical, you know, in this case like a soda can, like taping it to the recycling bin to like make it super obvious that this is where it belongs. But honestly, I don't really have any great great advice. I'm actually I have a question of like, who is finding that can in your bin, and who's assessing the fines? I'm like, that's impressive stuff that they're catching your contamination like that and bringing it back to you. So I actually am interested in that, but that's beside the point.
And sort of to go off what your question there, Kenneth, yeah, I think it was, I don't remember which organization it is, but I think they filter it out, or they filter through it in the process, and they found the can. And I don't remember what the amount of the fine was, but we weren't thrilled to get that rolling across the desk.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, no kidding. But yeah, education is the only the only thing I've got, and that only gets you so far.
Fair enough, thank you.
All right, and Lisa, did you want to add anything to this question?
Yes, I'd just like to mention, I wanted to actually, I was wondering if you know who fined you, you might actually want to get in touch with them, because I don't think, I mean, that's a pretty strict rule. There are usually it has to be over a certain amount of contamination before you get fined. And so it'd be good to know if that's from your waste hauler or who that's from, and what that limit is.
All right, thank you, Lisa.
All right, Lisa, you can promise that I'll be trying to get a hold of them to find out what that limit is. Thank you.
Okay, we are going to move on to our next question. And again, thank you for everyone who shared. This next question is also open to all of our presenters for today. This question was from Melissa Herrera, and they asked, we have implemented liquid pours, share table, landfill, recycle, and compost bins, but really struggling with the compost disposal. Our local trash company charges a lot of money, and with budget/staff cuts, it's been very difficult. Any recommendations on options to help with our composting disposal? Again, any presenters, if you're interested in answering this question, go ahead and unmute yourself now.
think there were a few examples that might be helpful. I mean, if you have someone who can work on site to help with composting there on site, that's one option. You can see if there are other people who want to collaborate with you, someone who's interested in picking it up and composting it themselves. There are also options for different digesters, but you need someone to help you with it. Although I do understand that San Francisco Unified School District was able to use some of their digesters with the help of high school students. So another thing to keep in mind.
Thank you, Lisa. And again, I'll give a couple seconds here if anybody else wants to chime in on this one. Okay, we're going to move on here. We actually had a success story that was shared by Prima Walker. That was in Coachella Valley. They're currently working with 2 high schools, and it took almost 1.5 years to start this program. And actually, Prima, if you want to, you're free to share that success story yourself and tell us a little bit about that work.
Sure, Zach. Thank you so much. So in Coachella Valley, I collaborate with another organization called Desert Compost, and we received a part of community composting grant, community composting for green spaces grant, and a local grant as well. So with those 2 grants, we get to go to many schools and talk them into, hey, we can help you with this one. I think this will apply to any school district or any teachers that are willing to do these programs where outside resources are help available, where it took us almost 1.5 years to 2 years to talk to the club students and the teachers and the school administrating department. Finally, we are composting in the school. And it is so amazing to see the students showing up every week after school, come and helping for an hour to do the manual labor of composting. And one of the school has Future Farmers of America program, so it's more aligned with their goals and what they would like to add to their program. If anybody is interested, I can share more. Given the time, I want to keep it short. But yes, here in the desert, we are, I'm helping 2 schools. I go there every week and spend a couple of hours. I train the students on everything related to community composting. Thank you.
Prima, thank you so much for sharing that story with us. All right, our next question is from Kristen Sales. This is again another question for Kenny. And the question, Kristen, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and read that out loud, that would be great. This is the question about paper towels.
Oh yeah. Okay. It's Kristen Sales, S-A-L-E-S. Kenny, I just wanted to ask, like, well, you kind of answered this question anyway, but during your presentation, you said that you next on the list would be composting paper towels from the restroom. And I know that a lot of restrooms have like green bins that say paper towels only on them. And I'm just wondering, like, is that your next step moving forward? And that might help like separate out the green materials from the food materials from the paper materials. So I was just wondering about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for the question. And yeah, it's definitely what we're shooting for, aiming for. However, we want to make sure that we're doing it in a coordinated fashion. Like, we want to also make sure that we're not only labeling the waste bins themselves, but even giving them different color liners so that the grounds staff can identify the bags as they're disposing of them later. And we're going to have to do another training for grounds and custodial to kind of cover some of these changes. So it's taking a little bit more work behind the scenes, if you will, kind of doing the interdepartmental work, the legwork of making sure everyone's prepped and ready for the rollout instead of just throwing it out there in an uncoordinated fashion, and then all that waste just ends up back in the landfill or something like that. So just trying to be strategic about it, be coordinated, organized, and then move forward as like a well understood intention of collecting those and getting them into the right bin.
Thank you, Kenny. And that's also a
Yeah.
question I just wanted to check if our presenters with Sac State or maybe Cal Poly Humboldt, if you want to share anything about your experience with approaching that paper towel question, you're welcome to do so here.
We did a pilot study with paper towels for the last 2 years, and we were able to show with special bins, as Kristen was saying, that say paper towels only. We put those special bins in the restrooms for certain buildings around campus. We were able to minimize the cross-contamination with things that wouldn't go in a paper towel waste bin, and actually we got it clean enough with some manual labor going through and sorting a little bit that we could put it into our food waste bio bin. But we never got to a point where there was low enough contamination that we could just dump it straight from that bin into the bio bin. So there always has to be, well, for Cal Poly Humboldt, what we've seen so far is we need that sorting step in the middle. And so depending on resources, it's either viable or not viable. So far, the special bins and signage and, reaching out and doing education and all of it has only gotten us so far.
Thank you, Liz. And Laura, I just want to give you an opportunity if you've had any experience with this over at Sac State. You want to share?
I'm just like Kenny. It's the next step. We're working on it. We have some pilot projects. We actually piloted on labs. There is a biology lab that wanted to try it, and labs are like more secure because nobody should be bringing food into the lab or any other materials, no water bottles. But we haven't fully get there yet. I do know about a few cases of other organizations that are doing it, and they use paper bags to collect the paper towels in the restrooms. And there is a really cool one that is UT Austin that has paper towel compactors to minimize the need for liners.
Thank you, Laura. All right, we're going to move on from paper towels on to our next question. This was from Tanya Sperling. Tanaya. Tanaya, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and read that question out loud, please.
Hi, I'm Tanya Sperling from California State Parks. So I do trash in a lot of our, all of our parks actually, and then we have a lot of remote parks. So not all of them are exempt from having to do the organic waste right now. And so my question is there any suggestions for animal-proof bins for use in campgrounds that aren't monitored every day? Because sometimes, it'd be a busy weekend or something, and the bins wouldn't be able to be emptied every night.
Right, and again, this is sort of an open question here. So if anybody or any one of our presenters is interested in taking a crack at this question, or somebody on the CalRecycle side of things as well, go ahead and unmute yourself and share any ideas you have.
The big belly solar compactors might be an option. We don't have any on my campus, but I have seen them in other sites and they work really good. There's big belly solar compactors.
Thank you.
Okay, we are going to move on to our next question. This question is from Ashley Clark regarding the bin challenge at Santa Monica College. Ashley, if you'd like to unmute yourself and share that question for us, please.
Yeah, I think it was answered, but I just thought about asking if there was any other, like an affordable way to kind of mitigate that problem. And the response that I got did make sense of the aesthetic differences and the durability of the plastic Slim Jims. Yeah.
And Kenny, I think you had answered this one in the Q&A. If you want to just kind of elaborate a little bit more on that response for us, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure, yeah. So the way that we had done things is basically just adding green bins as an additional bin to what was already existing around campus, whether it be those metal bins that I had showed during the presentations, or we have other bins within the cafeteria and stuff that are already like 3 slot bins, one for like landfill, one for paper waste, and then one for canned goods. We've explored, a number of different options, retrofitting the ones that we've got already versus using the plastic Slim Jim ones that we kind of already had at our disposal. So the plastic Slim Jim ones work as a bit of a kind of modified approach, if you will, not really the official way. It doesn't match the aesthetic of the bins that we already have. They do have lids and they do have signs attached to them, which are nice. They are a good start for kind of user friendliness for those bins. However, we just sometimes they topple over if they're empty and if there's a gust of wind that comes through, or we've seen already, because it's fully made out of plastic, that some of them are already breaking, and the signs, they get faded in the sun. So there's a lot of things that we're navigating through having the plastic bins, but ultimately we do think that it'll end up being kind of financially sound investment in order to kind of switch over the existing infrastructure rather than going for new stuff, or going with more of those plastic bins.
All right. Thank you, Kenny.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let me see if we have any more questions that have been on our side. Let's see. We did have something that was shared from Eric regarding practical solutions to sorting organic waste.
Yeah, I'm here. Hello, how are you? I just saw my unmute. How's everyone doing? Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are. Go ahead, Eric.
Oh yeah, no, I was just sorry. I was typing really quick, and I wasn't even finished. Yeah, no, I was just kind of thinking it through. I mean, I worked in San Francisco, started when they started doing the organic waste. I'm in Sac now. I live in Placer County, and yeah, I was just thinking. I mean, just hearing it, it just seems like, I mean, there's so much extra costs. I mean, there's a ton of extra resources needed, and yeah, I was just putting it out there. It's just an idea. It's like, doesn't it seem that it would be more practical sense, instead of stretching everyone's resources on site, and why not just sort it at a site that sorts it? I don't know. I'm just really throwing that out there as an idea. It's not going to change our approach. We're going to try to educate, and we have a huge district. We have 82 schools. It's absolutely a challenge at a school district. And I saw someone else's notes on there about food share tables and food waste and health department, stuff. And it's really challenging. I don't know if everyone else is kind of feeling that, at least at the public school district. But it's been very challenging to get the students on board mostly. But anyway, that was more of a thought and an idea, and I was just throwing it out there.
Thank you so much for sharing, Eric.
Yep.
And if any of our presenters want to respond to Eric's thoughts on that, you're welcome to do so here.
I think it would be amazing if we could get people to sort through it. I think the challenge is figuring out who that would be and who they would be paid by.
Yeah, so I guess, so at where I live, we don't sort all of our stuff. And I want to say it's Recology Auburn. It's probably something, I mean, obviously they have the ban of Recology is a huge company, but they do the sorting on site. And I was kind of thinking about, I was like, how do we do that in Placer County, but San Francisco can't do it, Sacramento doesn't do it? It's like, but I think it's just a difference in philosophy, right? And I think we want to sort, we want to divert waste. I mean, we're all on the same page. We want to make sure we have a healthy climate, and that we're teaching our students and our staff, about waste and how to control it. But as far as actually getting the sorting done consistently, yeah, the way they do it is they pick up our bins and then they're sorting it on site with staff who all they do is sort, and I'll give you an example where I just started a food share table, a soft launch over at West Campus, which is a small high school. It also has a small elementary called Mark Twain. And, the first day I put it out, I mean, the first thing that goes in, anyone that works in the school district knows because of the regulations, it's usually the fruit, right? Bag for any fruit they don't like, it just gets thrown in there because per our regulations in a school district, these students have to take a half cup of fruit or vegetable, which is a whole nother conversation, but that contributes to waste, right? Because they're required to take it. So I went to this site, West Campus, brought the food share table, and we do have a couple students there who volunteer. They're very passionate about food waste, food recovery, climate change and all those things. And they personally go through the garbage and sort it. But if I didn't have those two individuals at the school, there wouldn't be, I would say, it's got probably an enrollment of about, for their high school, maybe about 800, 900, I could be wrong. But to only have two, students volunteering, and that's what it really takes. It's really hard to get consistency with the students. And then again, we have students going through the garbage on their own. It's their own decision to do it. But I guess my point is, yeah, it's just hard. It's hard to recruit. It's hard to have, kindergartners sort through their tray and go through the line. So we have plant managers, we have extra staff on site. And I know there's grants and stuff for support through these companies to help get there. But ultimately, it really is, it's a balance of doing what we can, but also what we can do within our finances, because the budget is very, very, it's getting smaller and smaller by the day. You guys know, labor is going out the roof with all these labor increases. And yeah, I don't know. It was really just more of an idea. I'm glad I shared it with you, and maybe you guys can think that through. But just zooming out, being part of this for the past, I don't know, I was in San Francisco about 10 years ago. For the past 10, 15 years, I think the most practical way would be to consider, how do we get the garbage companies? I mean, and that's the other thing that I have a concern with, is that we don't even know where this stuff is going. So anyway, just really more thoughts and feedback. Thanks for your guys' opinion. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on that, Eric. All right, we do have one more question here. This was a question that was asked by Lena Norman as a general question for CalRecycle. Lena, if you want to go ahead and share that question with us.
Hey there, thank you so much for acknowledging my question. So my general question is, how can we encourage organizations to utilize the correct size bins that they would need for properties? For instance, a problem that organizations are getting the smallest bin that they can for multifamily units that are like 200 plus on the property, just in order to comply, and then they're not utilizing the bins properly. And I think it could be because the resource is so small that people probably either don't see it or don't recognize it as a tool to use. And I was just wondering if there is any way that we could have some material to cite or source when addressing these concerns with customers.
Thank you, Linda, for your question. For that part of the question, I'm sorry, I'm just reading. I was looking at your first question about schools. So for the right sizing, we can provide more guidance to you since we're running out of time, and I want to answer your school's questions too. We can provide guidance to you through our land representative. So we'll reach out to provide more information on that. But generally, haulers can help with that. And of course, we can look into what guidance that we have that we can provide. Can you ask your other question that you had, which I think is really applicable here about who's required to have organic bins, that question? Maybe you can't unmute anymore. Okay, no worries. So Linda had asked if, are there any organizations that, oh, there you go. There you are. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, so I was wondering for like private schools and charter schools, if there was any requirements for them for organics. So I know due to the capacity of how small the school is, I didn't know if there was a regulation, if they're like less than 10 or less than however many students on campus, if they were also required to have an organics bin, if there was any exemption for that, or if they are also supposed to comply as well. I just want to make sure that I'm citing things correctly, so when I come across like charter schools or private schools, that we're giving them the right information.
Yeah. And I went over at the beginning, and I'm sorry we didn't have a slide for that, but the definition of a local education agency. So a charter school is part of that. So they are considered a local education agency. And in general, with, under 1383, all organic waste generators, where organic waste is being generated, there should be organic waste collection, some sort of program. And there are cases where, we have waivers that we can issue to jurisdictions and non-local entities. For schools, because of the size of schools, getting approved for a waiver is unlikely. Because, for a waiver, and we can talk more about this offline, generally you have to produce 20 gallons of organic waste or less per week. And it's really hard for, schools to do that because they have lots of students. So I provided some links for you there. And I do want to follow up and provide more guidance on this. So we'll reach out to you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. So with that, I think we are ready to wrap up. So that concludes this month's chat. Thank you so much to all of our presenters and of course to all of the attendees. These chats would not be possible without all of you, and we really appreciate your participation. If you have any questions, recommendations, or suggestions for chats in the future, please send them to the SLCP inbox. If you haven't done so already, please sign up for our 1383 listserv. That's where you can receive updates on chats, resources, web pages, and more. So thank you all again. I'll now pass it over to Marshall for any closing remarks.
I just want to reiterate my appreciation for these opportunities. And also to give a little plug for next month, we are looking to address compliance pathways for SB 1383 procurement. So that's something that we can look forward to. In the meantime, again, thank you to all that participated.